Have you ever noticed how the people you respect most never feel the need to explain their choices to you? They don't justify their decisions. They don't defend their lifestyle. They don't seek your approval through elaborate reasoning. They simply state what they're doing, and suddenly everything changes. The energy shifts. People start to listen differently, respect them more, and somehow seek their approval instead. Now imagine if you did the same. If you stopped over-explaining every decision you make and chose confident statements instead. What do you think would happen? That's where the real power lies. When you stop explaining yourself, the world around you goes into crisis because people are used to controlling you through interrogation. But the day you choose to simply state your position without justification, the game changes. And those who thought they knew how to manipulate you realize they know absolutely nothing about the new you. Carl Jung said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Now think about this for a moment. Every time you explain yourself to someone, you're looking outside for validation. You're dreaming that their approval will make you feel worthy. But the moment you stop explaining, you awaken to your own inner authority. I want you to think right now about the last time someone questioned one of your decisions. Did you immediately launch into a detailed explanation? Did you feel that familiar anxiety, that need to make them understand? That exhaustion from crafting the perfect justification? Here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you. The moment you start explaining, you've already lost. You've positioned yourself as the defendant in a trial you never agreed to participate in. And the people demanding these explanations? They're not seeking understanding. They're feeding off your energy, your anxiety, your desperate need for their approval. But today, that changes. Today, you learn the secret that Jung discovered about human psychology and why the strongest people in history never explained themselves to those who didn't deserve explanations. But first, let me show you the hidden manipulation you don't see. Right now, there are people in your life who have trained you like a circus animal. Every time you make a decision, they ask, "Why?" And you perform. You jump through their hoops, providing detailed explanations, seeking their approval, exhausting yourself in the process. And here's what's truly devastating. You think this makes you a good person. You've been conditioned to believe that explaining yourself shows respect, transparency, good communication. But Jung understood something that modern psychology has forgotten. Your compulsive need to explain is not virtue. It's a prison. Let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. Who in your life gets the most explanations from you and respects you the least? Think about that for a moment. The people who demand the most justifications are often the ones who treat you with the least dignity. This is what Jung called the persona, the mask you wear to please others. Every explanation you give, every justification you craft, every desperate attempt to make others understand, that's your persona working overtime, trying to maintain an image of someone who's reasonable, accommodating, worthy of acceptance. But here's what Jung discovered about the persona. The more energy you put into maintaining it, the further you drift from your authentic self. And the further you drift from authenticity, the less people actually respect you. They respect your compliance, not you. Think about the people you truly admire. Steve Jobs never explained why he wore the same outfit every day. Oprah doesn't justify her business decisions to critics. Your favorite authors don't explain their creative choices to every reader who questions them. They understand something you're about to learn. Authority doesn't explain itself. The cost of your constant explanations is staggering. You're bleeding mental energy, attracting energy vampires, positioning yourself as subordinate, and worst of all, you're teaching people that your decisions are open for debate. If this is resonating with you, if you're starting to see the cage you've built around yourself with explanations, then subscribe to this channel. Because we're about to dive into Jung's most powerful insights about human psychology, and I promise you, what comes next will change how you see every relationship in your life. Now, let me introduce you to Jung's framework for understanding why you do this. Jung discovered that we all carry what he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've been taught to hide or suppress. And for many people, the shadow contains their natural authority, their right to make decisions without external validation. You've been conditioned to believe that not explaining yourself is selfish, rude, antisocial. But Jung understood that this conditioning serves a purpose. It keeps you controllable. When you constantly explain yourself, you're essentially asking permission to live your own life. Here's how the energy drain works. Every time someone questions your decision, your nervous system activates. Your brain immediately starts crafting responses, anticipating objections, seeking ways to make them approve. This is what Jung called psychic energy, being siphoned away from your authentic self and redirected toward maintaining your persona. But here's the deeper truth Jung discovered. The people who demand explanations from you aren't actually confused. They understand perfectly well what you're doing. What they don't understand is why you're allowing yourself to do it without their permission. And that drives them crazy. This is projection at its finest. They see your growing autonomy, your independence from their approval, and they project their own insecurities onto you. You're being selfish, they say. You're being secretive. But what they really mean is, you're not letting me control you anymore, and that threatens my sense of power. Jung spent his entire career studying this dynamic. He noticed that the people who demand the most explanations are often those who give the least respect. They've learned that questioning your decisions is an effective way to make you doubt yourself, to keep you in a subordinate position, to maintain their psychological advantage over you. And here's what's truly brilliant about Jung's analysis. He realized that your automatic urge to explain isn't actually about communication. It's about anxiety. You explain because you're afraid of being misunderstood, abandoned, criticized. But every explanation you give reinforces that fear and teaches others that your anxiety is something they can exploit. Think about this. When was the last time someone you deeply respect demanded that you explain a personal choice? Never. Because people who respect you understand that your decisions are none of their business unless you choose to share. And here comes Jung's greatest revelation. The solution is what I call strategic silence, Jung's approach to breaking free from the explanation trap. And it's simpler than you think, but more powerful than you can imagine. Instead of explaining, you simply state your position and then stop. I've decided to take this job. Silence. That doesn't work for me. Silence. I won't be able to make it. Silence. No justifications, no elaborate reasoning, no seeking approval through explanation. Here's what happens next, and this is where Jung's psychology becomes almost magical. The person who was expecting an explanation goes into crisis. Their usual manipulation tactic has failed. They're forced to confront the fact that they have no actual authority over your decisions. And in that moment of discomfort, they're meeting their own shadow, their need to control others. But Jung understood that this discomfort is exactly where transformation happens. When you stop explaining, you force everyone around you to relate to you as an equal rather than a subordinate. Some people will respect this immediately, others will fight it desperately. The ones who fight it, those are the people who were never really your friends. They were your handlers. They were the ones benefiting from your need for approval, feeding off your explanations, using your anxiety to maintain power over you. Now, I need to be honest with you about what this looks like in practice. When you first stop explaining yourself, people will call you selfish. They'll say you're being difficult, mysterious, antisocial. Jung called this the individuation process. The journey toward becoming your authentic self always involves disappointing people who are invested in your inauthenticity. Here's Jung's approach to handling this resistance. You don't argue with it. You don't explain why you're not explaining. You simply hold the silence and let them sit with their discomfort. Because that discomfort is their problem to solve, not yours. Think about it this way. When you explain yourself, you're taking responsibility for other people's emotional reactions to your choices. But Jung understood that this is actually a form of codependency. You're not being kind. You're being controlling. You're trying to manage their feelings instead of allowing them to have their own experience. The most important part of Jung's strategy is understanding that some relationships won't survive your transformation. And that's not a bug. It's a feature. The relationships that require you to constantly explain and justify yourself were never based on respect in the first place. So what happens when you actually implement this? First comes the silence, and with it, the most uncomfortable thing you'll ever experience. Other people's emotional reactions without your usual soothing explanations. Jung called this the dark night of the soul, the period where you're no longer your old people-pleasing self, but you haven't fully stepped into your new authority yet. You'll feel guilty. You'll want to go back to explaining. Your nervous system will scream at you to fix everyone's discomfort. But here's what Jung discovered about this process. It's temporary. The people who truly belong in your life will adjust to the new dynamic. They'll start treating you with more respect, not less. They'll stop taking your decisions personally and start seeing you as an autonomous individual with the right to live your own life. And the ones who can't adjust? Good. You don't want people in your life who can only relate to you when you're seeking their approval. But the most important part of this transformation isn't about other people. It's about you. When you stop explaining yourself, you start trusting yourself. When you stop seeking external validation for your choices, you develop internal authority. When you stop managing other people's emotions, you have energy for your own growth. Jung understood that this is what he called individuation, becoming who you actually are instead of who others need you to be. And individuation always requires disappointing people who were invested in your smaller self. Here's what your new life looks like. You make decisions quickly because you're not running them through a committee of people who don't have to live with the consequences. You attract higher quality relationships because you're no longer a magnet for people who need constant reassurance and explanation. You have mental energy for creativity, growth, and joy instead of wasting it on justifying your existence. People will start coming to you for advice instead of questioning your choices. They'll respect your boundaries because you've shown them how. They'll see you as someone with authority and wisdom instead of someone seeking approval. But let me be clear about who you'll lose in this process. You'll lose the people who only felt powerful when they could make you doubt yourself. You'll lose the relationships that were based on your insecurity rather than your strength. You'll lose the illusion that everyone's opinion of you matters equally. And here's what you'll gain: self-respect, mental peace, authentic relationships, natural authority, the ability to make decisions from your own inner wisdom instead of from fear of what others might think. Jung spent his entire career studying people who made this transformation, and he found that they all shared one characteristic. They were willing to be misunderstood by many in order to be truly known by few. So I ask you now, looking into your eyes through this screen, are you ready to be misunderstood by people who never really understood you anyway? Are you ready to stop explaining yourself to people who don't deserve explanations? Are you ready to reclaim the mental energy you've been bleeding through constant justification? The question isn't whether you're capable of this transformation. Jung proved that everyone is. The question is whether you're willing to disappoint people who who were never really rooting for your authentic success anyway. Tell me in the comments, are you ready to stop explaining yourself? Write, "I choose silence," if you're committed to trying this approach for the next week. Write, "I choose power," if you're ready to reclaim your authority. And write, "I choose respect," if you're done seeking approval from people who don't respect you anyway. Because here's the final truth that Jung understood about human nature. People don't respect you because you explain yourself well. They respect you because you don't need to explain yourself at all. The choice is yours. The power was always yours. The only question is, what are you going to do with it? And if you want to dive deeper into Jung's most powerful insights about human psychology and personal transformation, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because next week we're exploring Jung's concept of the shadow and why the parts of yourself you're most ashamed of might actually be your greatest sources of power.